Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of LiveFaith, where we are getting together to have a conversation and talk about our faith and what it looks like in our day-to-day lives. Today's interview is going to be a little different. I'm going to have to probably approach it as a hostile interview with somebody with questionable thoughts and opinions. Today, I will be interviewing myself. We'll see how it goes. Wanted to take today and this post to discuss a little bit about where we're at as a church, not only our church individually, River's Edge Church in Vernon Center, but the church across the country. Kind of a review of the last couple weeks. So we are 3 Sundays into our exclusively online church. So it was about 4 weeks ago that we really started coming to grips with what was going to be happening in the coming weeks. And as I have talked to people over the last few weeks, one of the things that I've said, because in those, especially those initial days, I was reaching out to a lot of my contacts around the area, around the state, around even the country, and saying, where are we at? What steps should we be looking at? It's a time that really, not only does it define where your church is at, but you really see how you've built yourself up. And River's Edge, we certainly aren't a perfect church, but we have established ourselves as a church that's able to move quickly, think on our feet, and be innovative. And I think we've seen that in this time, because across the country, essentially what happened when stay-at-home orders started to be placed. What we figured out is everybody in the country, whether you are the pastor of a multi-site megachurch in some metro area or the pastor of a small rural church in the middle of Minnesota, we were all of a sudden on the same footing. None of us knew what to do. How does a church exist without being able to gather together? How do you do a Sunday morning service when you can't have people in a building? So we had conversations. I'm sure every pastor had conversations with other pastors, with other ministry leaders, saying, where do we go? What do we do? We shared ideas with each other, which formulated the plan that we've been putting forth at River's Edge. Our Sunday morning services. We can't get more equipment. Even if we wanted to spend the money for more equipment, right now it's hard to get stuff. It's weeks out a lot of times for shipments and for, everybody wants everything. I was looking for a higher definition camera for this, and you can't get them. They're out everywhere. The microphone that I use that you sometimes see in the foreground here, I bought this almost immediately because I'd been thinking about getting one anyway, and now you can't get these either. So a lot of things changed. We put a new ministry format together after some initial conversations with our people. We said, I made the somewhat insane and aggressive, but I think needed plan to put out content 6 days a week. We have a Sunday morning service on Sunday mornings. On Monday, I write a blog on my personal blog, driventochrist.com. On Tuesdays, we do a LiveFaith video. On Wednesdays, we have a Zoom Bible study. On Thursdays, we do another LiveFaith video. On Fridays, we have another blog. Saturday, I don't know what you do if I'm not giving you something to do. You must be horribly bored. So, lots of content, lots of different ways, all intended to try and fill some needs, fill some voids that we not being able to get together causes. Initially, we said we were going to try and do it for a few weeks. Then we said it looks like we're in the whole of the month of April. Now, honestly, I'm under the assumption that the soonest we're going to be able to regather together again as a church as we did, or at least remotely as we did before this, would be towards the end of May or quite possibly June. We just don't know. And so we take it week to week. We take it press conference to press conference. I've talked to several people who don't like the stay-at-home order. They think it's ridiculous. I get that, but the question that I ask then is, what are we willing to do to save 100,000 people's lives? What are we willing to do to protect the lives of 100,000 vulnerable people in our nation? Because that's essentially what the numbers say. By doing the stay-home order, by flattening the curve, we're saving that many lives. And yes, they're lives of people who are at risk, but whether the decisions are right or wrong, that's the goal. And so it's my hope that we're all on board with doing whatever we can to encourage and support and love others. And that's, again, one of the first pushes we did as a church in this moment was community support. What needs are out there? What can we do to support our neighbors who are going through times of trouble? As I was recording this, it's Tuesday, April 7th, so this is going to be posted in a couple of days. I just finished listening to the governor's press conference, and they said right around 11% of the state of Minnesota has currently applied for unemployment. More than 1 out of 10 of every adult that works in this state isn't working right now. Those are big numbers. And so there's a lot of people that need encouragement and support, and that's what we're trying to do. And that schedule that I went over a little bit before, not only those things, but the way we go about each of those things is intended to try and support and fill the needs of the people that might be engaging with this. So our Sunday morning services, they're as high quality as we can make them. We've shortened them because who wants to sit and watch a YouTube video for over an hour when we can't really engage together? But at the same time, we believe the Holy Spirit is using that to bring us together and to function as a church. And I truly believe that that is happening. My blogs, they were something that I was starting before all of this happened, but I try to write them in order for people to have a moment to be encouraged, to be a little reflective. Hopefully there's a little bit of humor in there. But it's intended to sort of encourage, especially at the beginning and the end of the week. We're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. It's going to be all right. These videos, they're intended to be conversations to help bring out some engagement and some connection. And that's really central to all of this. How can we continue to connect, continue to have a sense of fellowship, continue to connect with other people even outside of our church, in our area, to build those relationships? Some thinking behind this. Several years ago, when I bought my Harley, I don't have the Harley anymore, but many people know that for a bunch of years I drove a Harley. I'd bought an old Honda at a garage or a fundraiser auction years before, and had driven it for years. This tiny little engine, tiny little thing, but I really enjoyed it, and I wanted, frankly, a real motorcycle, not a 30-year-old, very small-engined motorcycle. So what I did, it was sort of a bucket list dream. I needed some time to get away and reflect thing. I got on an airplane and I flew to Albuquerque, New Mexico, because why not? I spent a couple days in Albuquerque, just seeing the town and shopping around a little bit. And I went into the Harley dealer in Albuquerque and I bought a Harley. I then drove from Albuquerque to Roswell, again, because why not? You're in New Mexico, you have to go to Roswell, right? International UFO Museum. That's a stop. Been there twice now. Really good. But then I took Route 66 through New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, old 66, not the scenic Interstate 66. I weaved back and forth in these little picturesque old roads and little towns and villages. It was fantastic. Spent, I think, over a week traveling and had a couple of stops to meet people. But here's the thing. I sometimes joke that I don't like people, which is clearly not true. I do like people, but I'm more introverted. I like spending, that trip away by myself. That's how I refresh myself. So I think being away and not having to talk to people for several days is great. But what surprised me was after a few days, what I found myself doing was going into restaurants, and instead of doing what I would typically do and pick the booth way in the back off to the side where nobody can sneak up on me and I'm just off to my own, I started sitting in the middle of spaces and in these little, bar and restaurant next to the bar where there's people at, and talking with random strangers. Initially, that's strange for me because I don't like talking to strangers. But what I realized is after a while, even those of us who are introverted, we start craving a little bit more human connection, more conversation. And I still remember stories of having conversations with a guy who was bigger than I am, who was riding a motorcycle smaller than mine from California to Florida. And it had broken down 3 times, and we had breakfast at tables next to each other in Texas, and he figured he probably had another 5 days with what he was riding in order to get there so that he could go visit his daughter. Or the guy who worked for, ironically, this same large corporation that my wife was working with at the time, making textbooks, visiting his daughter in college in Iowa City. I had all these conversations and connections that I wouldn't have thought that I would have had because I don't like talking to people like that. But you just find yourself going there when you've been left kind of to your own thoughts for several days in a row. Now, keep in mind, I am introverted. It was 5 or 6 days of not really talking to anybody before I started talking to people. But that being said, in this time now, even the introverts are sort of getting sick of being stuck at home. And those who really crave additional human connection are hurting right now. So we're trying to set this stuff up and say, what can we do? How can we connect better? So let's teach each other how to use Zoom. Let's teach each other how we can connect better on Facebook, emails. Open your window when you're sitting at the house and talk to people as they walk by, or as you're in your yard and people walking by, have a socially distanced, appropriate conversation. I've had a lot of those. I've had a lot of conversations with my neighbors in the last couple of weeks. It helps that the weather is getting better. But we need those. As human beings, we need those connections. And as Christians, we need to have those connections in order to encourage each other and to continue to talk about our faith. To tell people who are scared, in Christ we have nothing to fear. Because even death is not that significant. What's on the other side of death is something that's far better than anything that's good that's happening on this side. So we don't seek it out, but we're not afraid of it either. And there's people who need to hear that message, that in Jesus Christ there's no fear. There's no fear of death. There's no fear of what is to come. There's only a hope in eternity. And that's a message that people need to hear right now. And that's how we can be the church, even without having our building, even without having our meetings, even without being able to have a community picnic or outreach events. Our day-to-day lives, our day-to-day interactions, they mean something. And something that we said in our conversation with James Rock in a previous LiveFaith episode, one that you're gonna see reiterated when we have an episode with James's coworker Tate and we talk about camping ministry. The whole idea is when we don't do things for a reason, they just kind of get lost. But when all of a sudden we're acting with a purpose, we're not just having a conversation, but we're having a conversation for the purpose of encouraging somebody, with the purpose of telling them that we care about them and seeing if there's something we can do to support them. Everything changes. Because we're doing it on purpose and we know why. So here's my close to a LiveFaith video. What can you do to better live out your faith in your day-to-day lives? Have purposeful, meaningful conversations with the people around you. From 6 feet away, from 10 feet away, across the fence, through a window, whatever. On Facebook Messenger, on a Zoom meeting, over text message, over a phone call. I don't care. But have those conversations that purposefully point to peace and joy and comfort and the cross. This is Easter week. Everything is about the cross. And we can tell people there's nothing to fear. Because Jesus died, he paid the penalty. We're all going to die sometime. It's going to happen. Sooner or later, when we do die, what's on the other side of that is so much better than this. And we can hold out that with joy while at the same time saying, I am here on this earth right now for a reason. It is to love God and to love others, and I'm going to do it with everything I have on purpose. So I hope you're doing that. If you are not regularly engaging in some of these things we're doing as a church, I would encourage you to. Maybe the idea of a Bible study isn't your favorite idea. And especially the idea of getting on your computer and figuring out how to run this Zoom thing isn't your idea. Do it anyway, because it's a chance where we get together, and I try to format that so we spend some time in small groups, because I can divide it up into small groups, and instead of talking to me and 12 other people, you're in a side chat with 4 or 5 people, and you're having a conversation, and we can share prayer requests and concerns, and we can talk about these things. Join up, be a part of that, and if for no other reason, then be a part of that in order to encourage the other people that are there as well. So I hope you're engaging with this. God bless you all. As always, I am here as a resource, whether you are a member, attender of Riverhead Church or not. Maybe you stumble into this and you live in Idaho and you just need somebody to talk to. Fine, I'm happy to talk to you. This is not a geographically limited thing. God bless you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time on LiveFaith, where I will be interviewing somebody who is not me. See ya.